Petra Brad, you are professor of law at Radboud University, and so you will speak about this issue, ruling by cheating. How is it possible, and how it works, and what are the consequences? Thank you.
Wonderful.
So you have 20 minutes or so.
20 minutes, yes, perfect. So thank you very much for the kind introduction and also for the invitation. Congratulations on convening this very, very important event, I think. And indeed, the title of the panel is Illiberal Regimes Dismantling the Rule of Law. And since Hungary is the jurisdiction I know the best, I will offer a number of examples from my home country, Hungary, but also a number of other examples from the Central Eastern European region. To have this also in the mix. And indeed, I have compiled 14 illiberal strategies for you, but I will also place an emphasis on parliamentarism or the lack of it, just to complement what Julien said about the executive and just to complement what John is going to say about the judiciary. So as a first point, we do know that the end of history didn't come, unfortunately, and what is more, the light failed, as we have learned from Krastev and Holmes, namely the model students, the model pupils of transition after 1989 and 1990, such as Hungary and Poland, turned out to be the last ones running. We have indeed been the model students. There was a little competition of who signs first the European Convention on Human Rights, who will accede to the European Union the first time, and then things unfortunately changed for the better. For the worse. What kind of states or what kind of regimes are we talking about? These regimes that we have in mind are neither democracies and nor free countries, and this is not me saying so, this is established think tanks saying so, but they are not dictatorships either. András Bozoki and Daniel Hegedűs call these regimes hybrid regimes. They are somewhere in between. They are called competitive stealth or electoral authoritarian regimes. The self-denomination of these regimes, as it was coined by Prime Minister Viktor Orban, is that they are illiberal democracies. We have just agreed yesterday that this is an oxymoron. So I rather tend to refer to them as hybrid regimes or as illiberal regimes instead of democracies. And fortunately, this has also been confirmed now by European Union institutions. And now I cite on the slide the European Parliamentary resolution expressly saying that Hungary is a hybrid, or was, hopefully, a hybrid regime of electoral autocracy. Now, there is this very special playbook that these regimes are all playing, whether we are talking about Bolsonaro or Viktor Orban or Israel or United States for that matter. And of course, we all refer to Levitsky and Ziblatt, but I slightly modified, if I may, the autocrats playbook to insert my thoughts also. So they start from a preliminary point, namely that significant portion of the population, and not potion, loses trust in government, and then as a first step, they neutralize or gain control of key institutions, such as the judiciary. Now, if they have a constitution-making majority, then they amend the constitution or draft their new constitution. And I think this is the decisive difference between Poland and Hungary. Hungary did have a constitution-making majority. Poland didn't. So, as Eva Letowska put it, they had to change the system through the back door. And this is why the methods, the Polish methods, have been much more visible. And they have been much more brutal, like not publishing constitutional tribunal judgments the government didn't like. Such a thing was not needed in Hungary because they just could change the constitution and immediately capture the Hungarian Constitutional Court. Then you dismantle checks and balances, you engage in scapegoating of traditionally discriminated minorities, whether it's the Roma, the LGBTI community, community. And you also have new scapegoats also found, such as civil society, or anyone turning to Strasbourg or Luxembourg, or anyone who is out of the ordinary. An unusual example is those women who wanted to give birth in their homes. There was a crusade against them right after 2010. Then you silence external dissent, and I mean it in a broad sense. So this is academics, this is artists, this is investigative, but not just investigative journalists, and this is civil society in general. And then you manipulate voter preferences. It has mainly two avenues. The one is media capture, and the other is the change of electoral laws. And then you have the system. There's a very famous saying by Viktor Orban. I didn't cite it because I didn't want to put him on my slides, but he once said, you have to win once, but then you have to win big. If you can make it, if you have a 2/3 majority in Hungary, then you can do whatever you want because you have the constitution-making majority in the country. And then I want to make a little detour about parliamentary capture, as we agreed. So interestingly, in contemporary illiberal governance, these regimes rule not against representative institutions, but increasingly through them. So first they capture them, and then they rule through them. They transfer them into an instrument of executive entrenchment while preserving the appearance of democratic legitimacy. Julien already a little bit talked about this. So electoral engineering. What we have witnessed in my country of origin, a reduction of parliamentary seats, which was very much welcomed, of course, by the electorate because it's less people, less money spent. A redesign of the constituency boundaries, very heavy gerrymandering, an introduction of winner compensation mechanism favoring the governing party through elections. Interestingly, this backfired on the 12th of April this year because now the former opposition party got the 2/3 majority even though just a little over 50% of the people voted for them. The introduction, the asymmetrical campaign conditions, they all contribute to the dominant party winning the elections. Then we have informational campaigns. You can also say disinformation and billboard politics, where publicly financed anti-migration and anti-Brussels campaigns in Hungary strongly overlap with governing political messaging. So it was presented as a messaging of public interest, but at the same time, this was exactly what the Fidesz party propagated. So it was very difficult to differentiate between party messages and the messages of the state. And a very interesting personal phenomenon is I also got messages from Fidesz email addresses about COVID-19. So this is something of public interest. Of course, you wanted to have or most of us wanted to have the vaccination, but at the same time, there was no line, or it was an extremely blurred line between party politics and matters of public interest. The opposition actors face severe restrictions in access to advertising space. And then when it came to parliament, parliamentary opposition rights were weakened through increasingly punitive use of disciplinary powers. The Speaker of the Hungarian Parliament, László Kövér, imposed exceptionally high financial sanctions amounting to a 1-year salary of an MP for protest actions inside Parliament, including the display of banners, the use of whistles and megaphones. And ultimately, these extremely high fines resulted in the European Court of Human Rights condemning Hungary and Karácsony and others for violating Article 10 of the ECHR. Then we have accelerated legislative procedures and constitutional overproduction. So if you only take the new constitution, the fundamental law, it was adopted in a 7-day period without the opposition having their say. Academics and civil society just didn't want to participate in this sham procedure, so they didn't. So the fundamental law, the most fundamental legal document of the country, has been accepted against the ignorance of the majority of the population. frustration and the harsh opposition of those who cared. Then you have omnibus legislation. We call this in Hungarian salad legislation, where you put everything inside and it's very difficult to tell what is actually in the legislation. No public debate, of course. You have exceptional procedures and overnight legislation when it's not related to the constitution now, but in relation to the ordinary laws. Some of them are adopted in a matter of couple of hours. Then you have emergency governance. So we have many states of emergencies and states of dangers. Since 2015, we have one for mass migration, then we have one for COVID-19, and this is exceptional in the whole European Union. We have one since 2022 due to the humanitarian catastrophe caused by the war. And then we have a number of pieces of legislation, decrees, governmental decrees that are not related to the emergency in question. Now, I don't want to debate whether Hungary is more under a threat of the war than Poland or Latvia, but the related laws that have been adopted have nothing to do with the original objective of introducing this state of danger, such as COVID-19. A state of danger was introduced, and then a law was adopted according to which people who underwent gender reassignment couldn't have their new gender documented in their IDs. I don't know how that solves the pandemic. Yes, so Parliament formally continue to operate, yet their deliberative, supervisory, and law-constraining functions are increasingly marginalized. So these democratic institutions survive formally, but they are repurposed to stabilize executive dominance and a veneer of legality. Now I jump, because we only have 20 minutes. So I jump to the 14 techniques in general, because what I wanted to tell you, and Dan has already talked about this yesterday, so I don't need to do that. But everything that these illiberal governments inside the European Union do, they dismantle European democracy and European rule of law. So everything that happens in a member state is a European matter at the same time. Just take elections. If members of the European Parliament are elected in an unfair manner, and this is again not me saying so, this is the OECD or they are saying so, then of course MEPs will be elected in a wrong manner, and that will legitimize every single piece of legislation that these MEPs are contributing to, or that they are co-adopting. Or we haven't talked about certain legal concepts in the European Union, for example, in the field of asylum and criminal cooperation, which are based on the presumption that every member state is a state based on the rule of law and respects fundamental rights. If this is not the case, then these legal instruments just simply don't work. So this is of existential importance for the EU to react. The EU has a number of tools to react, and some of them are on the slide. If you wish, Laurent and I, we published a report for the European Parliament, and we summarized all these tools in a nice onion format once back in the days. And we don't only have Article 7 infringement proceedings, conditionality proceedings, but they are very creative suggestions by colleagues such as John Moulin about political party regulation and funding mechanism at the European parliamentary level. Nevertheless, the European politicians always kept on blaming the tools. As Laurent once said, a bad workman always blames the tools, saying that we don't have enough tools, the tools are not dissuasive enough, they are not efficient, and as Dan has proven yesterday, elegantly, the European Union also contributed to these illiberal regimes instead of tackling them. How much time do I have? Oh my God, okay. So...
we can go to 5 because we can debate 20 minutes, I think it's okay.
Okay,
so
I'm sorry.
We can go
Originally,
to 5, it's
okay.
okay.
30 minutes, I'm trying
Don't
to speed
worry,
up.
5, it's okay.
Okay, so I don't want to whitewash these institutions, but I must say that there are a number of tactics by these illiberal regimes that make it increasingly difficult to face the problem in real life. And I have grouped these tactics in three groups. The one is discursive engineering. If you want to be simple, this is lying. The second is obstruction through process, so it's abuse of process, abuse of law. And the third one is compliance management, or non-enforcement in simple terms. So when it comes to lying, sometimes the lies are very simple, straightforward, brazen lies. some of you have already heard this from me, when the Hungarian fundamental law was adopted, the Hungarian government sent a version to Brussels that didn't correspond to the Hungarian language version, which was much more EU law friendly, and some NGOs had to point to the fact that this is not what the Hungarian version is saying. Then you have deceptive doublespeak, which is here I will just simply quote András Jakab, who has already been quoted yesterday. The government talks about the 10 commandments in public, but behind the scenes they trample on all 10 commandments, especially the 7th and the 8th. Okay, so a very nice description of this comes from Viktor Orbán himself, who says that he's dancing a peacock dance, saying something in Brussels and something very different in Budapest. Then you have the mirror blame that has already been addressed yesterday as well, doing exactly what you are blaming others with doing, such as, for example, granting asylum to Polish criminals, the previous Minister of Justice and Deputy Minister in Hungary, and then not extraditing them, not surrendering them to Poland, saying that they wouldn't face a fair trial in Poland, which is a perfectly fine democracy by now, or they have their issues, but they are okay. Whereas Hungary has very severe judicial independence issues, but they blame Poland with judicial independence issues. Whataboutism verbal, this is very nice. Whatever comes up, you just point to another country and raise an entirely different topic. Like when judicial independence in Hungary was tackled, the then Justice Minister, who, by the way, happens to be the ex-wife of the current prime minister, you can't make this up. But anyway, she created a Facebook page pointing to Finland, how they are treating the Sami minority. That might be an issue, but that has nothing to do with judicial independence in Hungary. Then you have hijacking principles like sovereignty, security, and constitutional identity. And here the captured courts, especially the constitutional courts, play a vital role. Then you have, and I'm quoting from Kim Lane-Shapley, fake international examples and Frankenstein playbook. So you always point to other countries' examples. They are using the same method, but the way they are put together is created. So it's basically a selection of worst practices. So from everywhere you take the most rights infringing practices, and this is the international example that you refer to. Then you have abusing process. So there is the unanimity ransom. We already discussed yesterday how much it cost for Brussels and all European member states for Viktor Orbán to take a 10-minute toilet break in return of not vetoing matters of vital interest. Then we have dialogue as a delay tactic, and I think it's absolutely crucial to remember that time is always on the side of illiberals and not on the side of democracy. One example that I can take is Lex CEU. There was a case in front of the Court of Justice condemning Hungary for all sorts of European Union law violations for chasing a prestigious university out of the country just because it was funded and founded by George Soros, who is enemy number one of Mr. Orbán. And by the time the judgment was rendered, the case was moot because the university was not in the country anymore. It was already settled in Vienna. Now, that's also a contribution of the Court of Justice and the Commission being too slow, but if there is an additional delay tactic, it will be very difficult to undo the harm. Then you have procedural obstruction and institutional overload and strategic exhaustion in the institutions. I have witnessed myself when Hungarian MPs arrived to a migration meeting, and it was supposed to last for 5 hours, and for 4 hours they were just questioning what migration means, who is a legal migrant, what is illegal migration, what is irregular migration, and we got stuck with definitional issues and never reached the topic. And then you have the last one, this is non-enforcement. You have various versions of non-enforcement too, so you have cosmetic compliance, paper implementation, but that doesn't bring change on the ground. Then you have selective compliance, complying with some issues, not with others. Then you have, interestingly, one step ahead and two steps backwards. So you have something positive, but then you immediately adopt another law, taking the country in the opposite direction. But because these legal proceedings tackling illiberalism are so slow, it takes, again, a very long time to point to the fact that even though one step was in the right direction, two were in the wrong one. And finally, you have the sheer non-enforcement of EU law and ultimately Court of Justice decisions, not to speak of Strasbourg decisions, but now I'm focusing on the European Union. I think one of the most visible judgments or emblematic judgments is a migration-related judgment coming from Luxembourg, as a consequence of which the Court of Justice ordered Hungary to pay 200 millions in lump sum and 1 million per day until the date of compliance with the judgment. And now Hungary is planning to take the European Union to court, saying that they didn't have the power to impose such a lump sum and such a payment on Hungary. Interestingly, the LGBTI, the homophobic law, has also been struck down, or they cannot strike down, but it has been held to be contrary to European Union law recently. Many of you and us have written about this because this was the first time the Court of Justice referred to Article 2 as an alone standing legal ground. And Mr. Orbán wasn't in power. I mean, he was still technically in power because the new government wasn't formed, but he immediately informed the president that Hungary is not going to comply with the judgment. So this is the straightforward resistance. And I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.